Hey there, I'm Tony DeCopel. This is The Uplift. We've got a great show for you, a great cast of characters as well. Among them, a pair of athletes who partnered to make history together. Also, a civil rights icon who bravely protested segregation by sitting still in just one place. Nate Burleson returns to Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro with General Joseph McNeil, who helped bring national attention via sit-ins. Also, we take you behind the scenes of a mega operation that requires preparedness and efficiency. What is this massive enterprise? You're going to find out. Also, David Begnaud has an update on the dog who lives up to his name. That name is Trooper. You may recognize him. He survived being abandoned ahead of a hurricane in Florida. Now, he is proving his resilience once again. All that and more heartwarming news. You know what you're watching, The Uplift. Hello there, welcome to The Uplift, the show that lifts you up for at least the next 30 minutes, you and me as well. And we're going to begin with this, a pair of athletes who began racing for very different reasons, but together they have formed a partnership with a common goal, a goal to make history together. Here's Caitlin O'Kane with their story.
Michael Saya and Max Fink have a special attachment. They're two regular racing partners who compete in countless 5Ks, Ironmans, and marathons all over the world. But before they were partners, they had their own reasons to race. When he was born with cerebral palsy 32 years ago, Michael's parents were told to commit him to a hospital. His father, Jim, says that was not an option.
I just really knew, there was no doubt that he was going to live a life of fulfillment and a life of abundance.
At a young age, Michael seemed to know that too.
I saw other people doing all these races, and I told my dad, I'm gonna do it too. So my first race was at the age of 5 years old.
At just 5 years old, Michael competed in his first duathlon with Jim as his partner. His brother competed by their side, a new challenge for all of them.
We wrecked a few times during the 30K bike ride, and I thought for sure he was never going to want to do this ever again. But his brother said, "Hey, Dad, there's a 5K coming up. You want to do that one?" So I said, "Let's ask Michael." So we asked Michael, and we kind of thought he was going to say no. Right away, he instantly said yes.
That tenacity after his first race has stuck with Michael. He's gone on to do countless races, as seen by the many medals hanging in his room. And Jim was inspired to create Special Compass, a nonprofit which helps people with disabilities compete in athletic events.
So over the years, parents that have kids with disabilities would ask me if I would push their kids in races. And of course, I always want to say yes, but if I did that, then Michael would be a spectator and he would just watch his dad pushing someone else. So I started recruiting other guys that were runners and athletes and asked them if they would push kids in chairs. And we now have 132 differently abled athletes that are assigned to Special Compass. And we have 132 volunteers, and we have a handful of ambassadors. Max obviously is an ambassador, and a badass ambassador.
Max is a fellow runner from South Florida. His reason for racing? His mom passed away from cancer in 2015. He and his sister decided to honor her by running the New York City Marathon, something his mom did when he was 6 years old.
And as I was training for that race, I had met Jim and Michael, and they had a 5K, and I went there and just got paired with Michael by happenstance. And I did the 5K, and I was, hooked like a drug immediately. Like, it was one of the most fulfilling things I'd ever done in my life. The energy from Michael and Jim and the entire group was indescribable. And we've been, locked at the hip, the three of us, ever since.
Two athletes who met doing what athletes do, competing. But perhaps they were brought together by something more divine. And Michael's spirit reminded Max of the person he was racing for, his mom.
I definitely think it was a a sign from my mom, and she brought Michael and Jim and I together, and it was so much part of who she was. She was like this energetically bubbly woman who only cared about other people other than herself, and that her attitude on life was so positive and always about the good and not the bad, and it's exactly how Michael and Jim lived their life. And so I think that's why we clicked, and I absolutely think she brought our paths together, 100%.
They've been on a path as teammates and now friends.
So Michael's always smiling, but then he starts to ask me if I'm doing okay. And as soon as he says, Max, are you doing okay? It means I've substantially slowed down. And so then I get really worried. And I look at the watch and I'm like, oh, I guess we did slow down a bit. So if you ever see Michael on the race course, he'll be going for high fives. But if he's looking back at me and saying, are you okay? Then something's probably gone a little bit slower than expected.
The determined duo's current goal, competing in all 6 Abbott World Marathon Majors. They've done Chicago, New York, Boston, London, and Berlin. There's just one more major marathon until they become one of the first teams to complete all 6, Tokyo, which they are set to compete in March 2025.
It feels amazing. It feels like my wheelchair is gone and I'm doing the running myself.
You're gonna make me cry.
Up next, we take you behind the scenes of a giant enterprise that brings joy to millions of Americans each and every single year. Find out what it is coming up. Time now for an inside look at an American institution, a massive annual operation that requires preparedness, also efficiency. What are we talking about? The Girl Scouts. Here's Madison Keevy.
Familiar flavors and some familiar faces. This is the Girl Scouts' Heart of Central California's Mega Drop, the day where Thin Mints, Caramel Delights, and every cookie in between is handed out to troops all over the region.
Very efficient. Nobody gets out of their car. They stay right in their car, and we put cookies in the back of the car. So it's just a great way to get them out in the community.
And I have the lemonade.
CBS 13's Marley Ginter and executive producer Katie Coroto led us beat tag-alongs as they helped their daughter's troop pick up some of the 50,000 cases of cookies that'll go out in 18 counties.
There's all these great skills that they're going to learn. They're going to learn people skills. They're going to learn how to budget, work with money, and just, the salesmanship, right?
See, we got the toast shaved. Yay!
Their troop is brand new and selling cookies for the very first time. Marley's daughter, Hannah, shared why supporting the Girl Scouts is a sweet treat for everyone.
I got to meet my mom's friends. And I'm so happy that I get to be with her tomorrow.
The proceeds from each purchase stay local and help Girl Scouts grow.
It helps us get more money and because it helps us know other people.
So they're the ones that are going to be selling. They're the ones learning all of these important skills. And by buying these cookies, you're supporting them. You're giving them the opportunity to go on camping trips and different field trips and learn to be leaders.
Coming up, we close out Black History Month with a powerful story about the Greensboro Four, a group of college freshmen who defied segregation and brought national attention to sit-ins and what they represented, how they brought hundreds of others to their cause. That is coming up.
How does it make you feel to be called a trailblazer in the civil rights movement?
Not really self-serving. People knew these risks exist. Young people were aware of this. But it wasn't about us so much as what we grew to develop.
It wasn't about you, it was about what you were trying to accomplish for the movement.
Absolutely. Well put.
February is, of course, Black History Month, and to celebrate the civil rights leaders who fought to end legal segregation, Nate Burleson went to Woolworth's Lunch Counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's now a museum, but then the site of a sit-in by 4 college freshmen. It brought national attention to their non-violent and successful protest.
All of the restoration.
What's now an empty lunch counter was once packed with crowds and conflict. At 17 years old, Joseph McNeil, a freshman in college, took a bold stand by asking for service at a segregated lunch counter.
I had to tell my mother that I might be taking on something very difficult.
Right.
I might be going to jail.
Right.
And she says, "What? What are you doing going to jail?"
He was worried about being arrested for the act of sitting still after he and 3 friends, Ezell Blair Jr., David Richmond, and Franklin McCain, started a sit-in at Woolworth's department store.
4 college freshmen, all Negroes, were refused service at a Greensboro, North Carolina lunch counter, and the civil rights sit-in was born.
As we sit here in the same space as Woolworth's lunch counter, now a museum, what memories come back to you?
Intense feelings, some degree of fear, but it wasn't really fierce, because we came back day after day after day.
Known as the Greensboro Four, the number of students soon multiplied within days.
The reality was that in grade 3, we had grown from 4 to 16.
Wow.
To the beginning of 100.
Wow.
Plus students, all students.
Wow.
We didn't let adults. We figured they'd get in the way. They weren't able to take on risks like young kids.
Now 82, McNeil battles advanced Parkinson's disease. Though speaking is a challenge, his memories of that day remain vivid and unwavering. His son Joseph Jr. joined to help him gather his thoughts.
It wasn't just a couple of days. This lasted for months.
And you had no idea that it would take those curves and develop and grew each day.
Each day they were challenged, from everyday Americans to the Ku Klux Klan.
This one night, the KKK decided that they were going to show their strength. They were making these lewd gestures. And my assessment was this could get out of hand.
Right.
We're going to get stomped tonight. So we were faced with this dilemma.
Yeah.
We're talking nonviolence.
Right.
And it looks like it's
about to get violent.
But there was no backing down.
No backing down.
They studied nonviolent tactics at their local NAACP chapter.
We insisted on anyone participating in our demonstrations remaining nonviolent, not retaliating in the face of either verbal or physical abuse.
How important was strategy?
Damn important. This was conflict, but done through nonviolence.
Right.
Which shook these people up. We knew there could be some losses.
Montgomery, Alabama, in 1955 was the beginning.
Though not the first lunch counter protesters, the Greensboro Four brought national attention to sit-ins. Extensive TV coverage spread the movement across the South. By year's end, 75,000 students had joined. 3,600 were arrested.
We didn't know it at the time that you could use things like the TV and
newspapers.
The Greensboro Woolworths did integrate, and they did it quietly when college students were on summer break. 20 years later, they returned to Woolworths, this time invited by the company.
They were not refused service this time, but they were unable to eat because of the hordes of cameramen taking pictures and reporters asking questions.
The original seats and counter remain a powerful reminder of the courage that sparked change. Today, this space stands as the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. CEO John Swain led the charge to secure its place as a historic landmark.
I think people who live here, they're very proud of the fact that we have achieved those milestones.
Is the younger generation as curious, as hungry for knowledge about the past as we may be?
The younger generation, with the killing of George Floyd, the younger generation turned out in droves. They're seeing it today. It's not going away.
Right.
We're teaching young students that through social disobedience, direct action, collaboration, you can get together and solve some of these vexing issues.
After the sit-ins, McNeil joined the U.S. Air Force Reserves, rising to the rank of 2-star Major General.
Why did you decide to serve this country, even though the country didn't serve African American people too well?
I cared enough to say I can stand tall because I've got the best you've thrown at me.
He later joined the Federal Aviation Administration, spearheading diversity initiatives there and in the Air Force. High achievements that sprung from his determination to sit down.
How does it make you feel to be called a trailblazer in the civil rights movement?
Not really self-serving. People knew these risks exist. Young people were aware of this. But it wasn't about us so much as what we grew to develop.
It wasn't about you, it was about what you were trying to accomplish for the movement.
Well put.
Coming up, remember Trooper the dog, that resilient pup who was abandoned before Hurricane Milton? Well, he is proving his resilience once again and living up to his name. David Begnaud, an update on Trooper next. Last year, an image of a dog abandoned before Hurricane Milton went viral, and David Begnaud was on that story very quickly. He's followed it, his story from the rescue by a state trooper to the dog's adoption and the symbol of resilience that this pup has become. Well, David's got another update on the dog named Trooper.
Look at this! This is Trooper Duper!
You are looking at the moment when Trooper the dog met his forever family.
We're going to be best friends, I can tell you now.
Including his new sister, Dallas. The photo of their initial meeting seemed to say it all. It looked like love at first sight.
Trooper! It's Trooper! It's your brother!
And that is where our last story on Trooper ended. At Frank and Carla Spina's house in Florida, where he seemed like he was going to have a great life.
Dally loves you. She gives you kisses.
2 months after our last story aired, we checked back in with the Spinas to see how Trooper was doing, assuming not much had happened. Well, we were shocked by what we found out.
About maybe 2 weeks after the original segment aired, we had been noticing since we adopted him that he had 2 dime-sized lumps on his left flank. The doctor immediately said, "Oh no, these are mast cell tumors. These are cancer." So we were in complete meltdown.
Trooper had to have surgery to remove the cancer. Then came the painstaking wait for the results on whether it was successful.
These are our children. We don't have children. These are our children. And then we got that good news, and we were just so relieved. When we left the doctor's office that day after he got his stitches out, the doctor said, "He's done, he's cancer-free." We were literally in tears, just walking to the car, happy tears.
Finally, Trooper's happy ending, right? Well, no, not quite yet.
He was out and walking, and he just started putting his head down. So I went under him and he vomited and a piece of rubber came out of his mouth. So this is actually a freezer bag. This freezer bag weighs 2.1 pounds. It's a combination of about 110 or 120 pieces of garbage. Could you imagine how starved he had to be to ingest a piece of metal or pieces of rubber that are the size of quarters?
Our little buddy needed a life-saving procedure. It took vets in Miami more than 4 hours to remove the metal and the rubber from his stomach.
What
are you doing, guys?
We have a very special bond, me and him. He's my best friend. And I think I'm his best friend. I think my wife would agree. That I would rather give my life than she would give her life to save his life.
And we don't doubt that for 1 second, because Frank, a criminal defense attorney, is not just fighting for Trooper's health. He and Carla are also fighting for justice, for the abuse they allege Trooper had to endure before he came to them.
I reached out to the Hillsborough State's Attorney's Office. And this is their victim witness. This victim witness will be at every single hearing for that gentleman who did this.
I don't blame you.
At every single date, every single hearing, a trial, a sentencing, we'll be there. He's going to have to look at this dog and account for what he did to him.
Trooper is more than okay now, or so we think. He is happy and looks to be loving life.
He's definitely daddy's boy, right? You daddies, but I love you too. I love you, I love you, I love you. I love you, Papa, I do.
That's our show. I hope it brightened your day. I hope it lifted you up. If for some reason it didn't, go ahead and press play again. Those reruns of The Uplift, totally free. I'm gonna go find some good news.